Do not get caught up in the hype that promises shortcuts, especially the ones dressed up as efficiency. That is the one single piece of advice that I would give my 20-year-old self if I were to be able to go back in time. Now, for some context, the reason I say this, and I've thought about this a lot, is because in the last 15 years, I've been very fortunate to gain a certain level of proficiency across 3 very different fields. Number 1 being CrossFit, number 2 being visual arts, and number 3, more lately, has been business. Across all 3 of them, I have recognized patterns that have served me a lifetime that I pursue and apply every single day, or at least try to. And I feel that a lot of young people are falling into the trap of missing the things that are key and focusing on the shiny object. So in this video, I'll explain why fundamental understanding of things is much more important than any trend or tool or hype. And I'll show you how they have been key in my personal growth and journey across all these 3 disciplines. So we're going to break this video up a bit, and we're going to first start with the patterns that I've noticed, both the patterns that are misconceived by beginners and the patterns I think you should focus on, or at least that I focused on, and the lessons I've taken from them. Jumping back to the beginning, I got really interested in just general fitness when I was around, I'd say 20. I've been in sports my entire life. I started with soccer, went into horseback riding, hockey, tennis, probably ended with rugby, I would say. And then I just got into general fitness. And then I discovered CrossFit. That got me really hooked into just the aspect of what CrossFit was, because it was constantly varied functional movements under or performed under high intensity. I really loved that. I loved the aspect of it. I didn't know anything about it. Mind you, I didn't know anything about bodybuilding either, because I was very young. I didn't understand anything. But I got into CrossFit, got really into it, and I think luckily I got sort of a personal coach really early on who didn't necessarily taught me CrossFit. He was teaching me fundamental things. He was teaching me how to move well, how to build up my cardiovascular base, how to build up my gymnastics, how to build up my strength. So I was focused on like CrossFit as a whole. I was like, this is what I need to do and want to do. But in order to get better at it, I was doing very foundational movements. Now, I didn't put 2 and 2 together when you're young and you don't understand anything. So I was just going through the movements, but I did see rapid improvement. And so I noticed this every time people get into CrossFit, and probably any sport, is what they start with is sort of this poster boy package of what they think a CrossFitter is or a bodybuilder is. So what they do, they buy all the gear, they buy the gloves, they buy the supplements they see popping up everywhere. And none of them, to their surprise, makes them a better CrossFitter. Obviously. It's a running joke in the CrossFit community when you see a first-time CrossFitter is like fully geared up, gloves and sleeves everywhere, and they're wearing all of the branded out gear, basically. And then a super experienced CrossFitter is just bare bones, nothing, just the shorts. Everything else is basically just bare skin and doing really well functional movements. And so for CrossFit, it's not about all the gear, it's about the grind. Right? It's about understanding how to move, how to fuel your body, how to understand all of the different disciplines of fitness. You know, if you want to get really good at CrossFit, you need to understand how the body actually gets energy. So you need to understand the energy systems of the body and how to train them, from ATP, CP, and aerobic sort of energy systems. You need to understand this. You need to know how to build strength. You need to know how strength building works for your body specifically. You need to know what the limit is of your body in terms of movements, in terms of gymnastics, in terms of strength, all of that compounds into a very efficient knowledge of things, which enables you to be incredibly more proficient in a certain thing than anyone else, even people with either an advantage on age or even talent. All of that doesn't matter when you have a really good grasp on the fundamental things. So I see this all the time when I travel and I visit a CrossFit box. There's always these young, jacked guys that want to show the old guy how it's done. And usually I beat all of them, not because I'm necessarily any better than them, but because I understand the fundamentals of how to move well, makes me more efficient. I know my body really well. I know when to take rests during a workout. I know how to pace myself. All of this creates a compounded level of proficiency. And I'm not a world-class CrossFitter by any means, but I'm very proficient at it. So that's like my first observation going back, or like tracing back my understanding of fundamentals. Is like for CrossFit or for any sort of fitness endeavor in general, whether it's bodybuilding, weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, track, it doesn't really matter. It's all about understanding the grind. It's not the gear that's going to make you, very good at it. And I already told the backstory of, getting into art, how I wanted to get into art. And basically what I did in order to get good at art, I started to understand a little bit of the fundamentals understanding of what it takes to get good. It was more about, for me, I wasn't necessarily at that time thinking about the fundamentals, like, I need to understand the fundamentals in order to get good at art. But I did take away some key points from CrossFit that were like, I need to not only do the thing I think I should be doing, and I need to work on my weaknesses a lot, right? Stronger than yesterday is a very famous quote in the CrossFit community. So I was like, okay, I need to work on my weaknesses really well. I need to have consistency in what I do, and I definitely need to do things that I don't necessarily think I should be doing, but that will also supplement my training. So that was my first mindset into going into art. And it helped me really well because I grew pretty quickly in a fairly efficient artist. And then because of art, I started to understand the importance of fundamentals. I started to understand that, there's things like perspective and form and value and composition and design. And so all of this opened my understanding towards what does it actually take to be good at something. And it always traced back to fundamentals. And for art, they're pretty obvious. And I'm very happy actually that in the art community, unlike other communities, by the way, we emphasize fundamentals very often. Although some of you still ignore them a lot, we emphasize them a lot, right? It's the relentless application of the boring basic stuff that makes you incredibly good at anything. And so fundamentals are important. And this is what I learned when getting into art. And again, when I see new artists, and you still see this on a daily basis, check all my videos when I'm drawing with any of these pens, like what pens are you using? What brushes are you using? What software are you using? What's the latest hype in 3D? What's the latest hype in, at the time it was photo bashing. What's the latest hype now with AI? And it's all of this focus on trends and tools that promise a shortcut but undermine the actual efficiency it takes to get good, period. Especially now, with so much technology available. I've talked about this in a different video about the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? But here's what tech does that is so dangerous, is the Dunning-Kruger effect basically dictates that if you start anything new in terms of skills, you have naive optimism, meaning you have a lot of confidence in the fact that you think you're going to be able to do it, but you have zero competence. So you have a lot of naive optimism, which you then realize falls into the valley of despair, where you understand that, holy shit, this takes a lot more effort than I thought, without actually really understanding what's going on. So that's the valley of despair, because you're still very low in competence and you're suddenly also low in confidence. But the problem with tools, the tech and tools, is that they just exponentially increase this confidence graph while still being incredibly low in competence. And the worst thing about it is that you get a bigger sense of perceived confidence, or competence. You get a bigger sense of perceived competence because, especially with AI, it pumps out something that seemingly looks good. Same for people that are into coding. It pumps out things that seemingly look like they're working, but under the hood, it's all garbage. And so, this problematic area of the Dunning-Kruger effect gets exponentially increased. And therefore, it's a big danger for young people getting into anything they want to get good at, basically. And I'm not saying tools are bad, but tools are a catalyst for your competence. And if your competence is low, all you're doing is you're just exponentially increasing your confidence while not really increasing your competence. Whereas if you reach guru status and you're using AI tools, you're using 3D, my God, you're unstoppable. But you need to gain fundamental knowledge first in order to get there. And my third endeavor, which is business. I love business. I'm probably one of the only artists in the community that does. That's not true. There's many artists that love business. But it's the same thing. And I'm very grateful that I've first learned these little things in CrossFit and then learned a lot of this in art, because then it made me realize the things I needed to apply in business to get much better at it, much faster than anyone else, by simply focusing on the fundamentals of what business is. And there are many fundamentals, and they're completely different, but they're so much fun to learn because I get to learn, again, a new set of skills. There's something completely different to it. It's a completely different aspect, but the mindset is almost exactly the same. Learn the fundamentals, grind through them, understand them as best as you can, apply them, see what works, and grow steadily and eventually exponentially. And that's all I'm doing. And as soon as I want to learn something new, I will apply that. Now, the sort of the dark or flip side of that is that because you understand it, sometimes it deters you from learning something new. And a great example of this is I wanted to learn the piano, but I realized that in order to get it to a level I would be happy with, which would be pretty good, meant that I understood that, okay, now I'm going to have to learn the basics and fundamentals of music and playing the piano, playing an instrument. I'm going to have to learn all of that. I'm going to have to put time and effort into it. It's going to be a grind, and I know it's going to be a time investment. So you also start to understand that, hey, choose your battles carefully, because the thing you want to get good at is going to take time and effort, and no tool is going to replace that. There's not a pill in the world that will make you very fit. There's not a tool in the world that will make you an incredible artist. There's not any type of GPT that will give you a brilliant business plan and idea and execute it. There just isn't. You need to learn the fundamentals. So if I were to, again, like I said in the beginning of this video, do not get caught in the hype of things with the promise of great outcomes, especially the ones that are disguised as efficiency, because there's a lot of them, especially with AI now. There's a lot of these sort of promises of like, oh, if you do this, your output is 10x, blah, 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 just bullshit, okay? If you don't have the fundamental knowledge on how to apply things, none of the tools are going to matter. So my advice to my younger self would be to just focus on that earlier. Understand that getting good, getting proficient at something takes time, effort, consistency, discipline, and For me, there is a shortcut. The shortcut is understanding early on what the fundamentals are exactly for the thing you want to understand better and get better at. And that's where the internet and maybe even tools like AI or GPT are great for. So you can like sort of research what actual fundamentals do I need to learn in order to get good at X. And if you understand those, research how to get better at those individual fundamentals and then start applying that. I think that's a much better way on how to approach just getting good at anything you want to get good at. Also, build a resilience towards hypes and trends. Learn to see them for what they are. Learn to see them for hypes and trends. And don't necessarily ignore them, but look past them. Understand that they're just hypes and they will die or they will fade, but the fundamentals will stay. That consistency will stay. And I've yet to see an example where that hasn't been the case. Technology, again, is an accelerator when you actually understand the fundamentals of your skill or expertise, but it's definitely not a replacement. So you might as well just start by falling in love with the process of doing things, not the result. Again, that's one of my major tips that I would give young artists. Focus on the process because the process will drive result. If you're too hyper-focused on getting the result fast and quickly in a shortcut way, you will always be disappointed. So remember that there's no trend or hype or tech that can replace mastery. It can replace fundamentals. There's none of that. Mastery over the fundamentals is basically doing the consistent, unsexy, very boring work over and over, but loving the process. All right? I hope that serves you a little bit because it would certainly have helped me more if I got that advice when I was 20. Stay creative and happy drawing.